Hey there nation, and welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Chiefskate, and we're back on an episode of Way of the Underhive. This series is dedicated to helping brand new players to Necromunda build their starting rosters and learn more about the game mechanics of their favorite gangs. And on today's episode, we will discuss playing an House Outcast gang in the Aranthian Succession. We will discuss the positive and negatives of playing in the Aranthian Succession, how House Outcast gangs differ in the Aranthian Succession, provide tips on alliances, brutes, hanger-ons, as well as hired guns, provide a 2,400 starting roster so that you can build your own gang and use it in your future campaigns, explain how this roster is played on the tabletop, help with gang development as your campaign progresses, and provide an overall conclusion on this type of gang set in this campaign setting. Now, because this video is a little bit longer, I will put timestamps down in the description box below so that way you can click and navigate as you want to. Now, in case you're unfamiliar what House Outcast Gangs are, House Outcast Gangs are members of the 6 original houses of Necromunda, so like Orlok, Escher, Goliath, etc. These people have been kicked out of their own house for any number of reasons, and now they have to eke an existence on the periphery of the Underhive as well. Now, there's some really interesting game mechanics that you can do with a House Outcast gang because they're very similar to what a normal house gang can do, but at the same time though, there's some individual nuances that make them in some cases even better than their normal house counterparts as well. So when we begin this video, I asked with a couple of questions. First of all, is playing a house gang just too vanilla for you? Are you bored with playing with your miniatures and you're looking for a new challenge, maybe looking for a new way to make a powerful build with the miniatures you already currently are playing and want to try out the Outcast gang? Then a House Outcast gang is perfect for you. So with that being said, let's talk about exactly how they will do in the Aranthian Succession. First of all, let's talk about the positives of playing in the Aranthian Succession. In Aranthian Succession, you have anywhere between 2,000 to 2,400 credits to start your gang. It depends whether you're staying in the Underhive or if you're planning on venturing out into the Ash Wastes. If you're planning on just sticking in the Underhive, you have 2,000 credits to work with, but if you plan on going to the Underhive as well as the Ash Wastes, you got 2,400 credits, 400 credits of which should be spent on your mounted fighters and or your vehicles at minimum. You can also break into the original 2,000 if you want to really upgrade your vehicles, so that's entirely up to you how you want to do that. Now, when it comes to this, of course, what a lot of people actually thought was the original intention was that you take a typical 1,000 point gang or 1,400 point gang for the Ash Wastes and you double it. So you double your leaders, you double your champions, you double your gang fighters, prospects, etc. However, though, that's the wrong way to look at it. In my opinion, what you really need to do is actually stick with the normal number of gangs members that you usually have when you first start out. Except this time though, instead of going for more quantity of fighters, what you do is you go for a quality over quantity type build, meaning that you equip your fighters accordingly. With this additional bump in credits, you could actually do really interesting things like provide better weapons, better equipment, war gear, armor, exotic beasts, things that you would not normally equip your fighters with at the beginning of a normal campaign. Now you have that twice as many points. You could actually really flesh out your fighters and actually make them very amazing. And that's one of the things that's really nice about the Aranthian Succession. So that's some of the positives about playing in this campaign setting. Now, with that being said, let's talk about some of the negatives of playing in the Aranthian Succession. First and foremost, it's going to be the balance bandwagon. Unfortunately, not all the rules have been released for the Aranthian Succession, at least not at the time that this video is being made. So there are some gangs, for example, that haven't had any attention given to them from the Aranthian Succession. House Van Sar, for example, is a perfect example of this. They haven't gotten any new kind of upgrades or anything yet, or anything teased for that matter, about what they might be seeing in the Aranthian Succession. So, for example, your opponents, especially if they're playing a gang that has not received any support, they're going to raise merry hell about the fact that you might be playing a gang that has support and they don't. So just keep that in mind. Granted, if you do run to that level of immaturity, just tell them to either play or find someone else to wargame with. It's just that simple. Now, another thing you got to think about before is, like I said before, a lot of people think that you got to double a 1,000 credit gang, but that's actually the wrong way of looking at it. Just stick with the normal box set of miniatures you actually have, whatever you currently have on hand, especially if you're planning on playing an Outcast gang from your house. So, for example, if you play a House Orlok gang and you want to try something different, play a House Orlok Outcast gang and use the exact same miniatures that you have and just use the new point values to do that. It saves you a lot of time and money and also gives you something new to do with your gang as well. Another negative about the Aranthian Succession is that it is very narrative heavy in terms of its scenarios as well as its rules. So if you're not really into narrative play, this campaign might not be for you, in which case you might not want to do the Aranthian Succession. But since a lot of people out there really want to try this out and try out the larger gangs with the more credits, I suggest give it a try and see exactly how you feel about it. So now that we're done talking about the positive and negative effects of playing in the Aranthian Succession, let's talk about how House Outcast Gangs specifically differ in the Aranthian Succession setting. Now then, when it comes to House Outcast Gangs in the Aranthian Succession, the nice thing about this is that before, whenever you used to put a gang together, you would have to make some difficult choices. You'd either have to equip your gang with really good weapons or give them really good survivability, but you couldn't do both. In most cases, most gangs were just kind of bare bones for the most part. Maybe you might have a long-range shooting weapon, but you have nothing to defend yourself with in close combat, or you had something for close combat but nothing to shoot with as well. The nice thing about the increased credit value is that you could actually fully equip your core gang members with everything they need to be in order to be successful. Things like better armor, photo goggles, respirators. I mean, how many people actually start off a campaign purchasing photo goggles and respirators? Suspensors for heavy weapons, weapon accessories like telescopic sights, infra sights, gun shrouds, maybe even going over for the exotic beasts like cyber mastiffs or sheen birds, for example, for a collar gang. And we can just go on and on as well. Another thing that's also nice about the Outcast Gangs is that because you do have that 2,400 points in order to build your gang, you can really upgrade your vehicles as well, give them better armor, equipment, war gear, and upgrades. It's going to make your vehicles very powerful in the Aranthian Succession as well. And probably the coolest thing about actually playing a House Outcast Gang is that you can now take Dramatis Personae characters as leaders for your gang, especially if you decide to play a house-specific gang as well. So for example, let's say you have any Dramatis Personae characters who are unique to House Orlok, for example, like Slate Merdena, for example. He's the bounty hunter character, the house agent. You could actually use that character as a leader of your gang and build your outcast gang around that player. Or let's say, for example, you're a House Escher player and you want to use what's her name, Nakara, the never dying death maiden. You want to use her for your leader. You could do that as well. So that's the neat thing about the Outcast rules for House Gangs, is that you could use those house specific Dramatis Personae to actually make the leaders of your gangs. But perhaps the most important thing about a House Outcast Gang, which I think is really important and probably kind of like an oversight from Games Workshop, is the free use of equipment between all levels of fighters in your Outcast Gang. Let me go explain what I mean by that. So when you look at your house gangs, for example, you have different levels of fighters. You have leaders, of course, you have your champions, you have your gangers, your juvies, as well as your prospect characters. And of course, you might have some crew characters as well, depending if your gang has received that upgrade yet or not in this setting. Now, with that being said, each fighter has a very specific set of weapons and equipment that they can actually choose from in their gang lists in their actual gang books. So for example, some weapons that are available for a leader might not be available for a champion, and things that might not be available for may be available for a champion might not be available for your gangers. However, in an Outcast gang, that doesn't actually happen. You just take the entirety of your gang's list and you could equip your fighters exactly the way you want. So for example, a perfect example of this is the House Cawdor gang. A House Cawdor Outcast gang has a plethora of choices they can choose from, because not only can they choose individual weapons and war gear from the normal Cawdor lists, but they could also use the same exact thing from the Redemptionists as well. You could actually pair maybe Cawdor war gear with Redemptionist weapons, and then you can build your gang around that. So you can make some really powerful combinations of fighters using different equipment sets from your lists specific to your house as well, which is really, really cool. And there's no restrictions about pretty much how it goes. Aside from, of course, things like special weapons, heavy weapons, that's really about it. But for like basic weapons, close combat weapons, war gear, that kind of thing, not so much with restrictions. So that's part really nice as well. At the same time, even though you're a House Outcast gang, you do have access to house-specific brutes, hanger-ons, as well as hired guns. So for example, let's say you're a House Escher gang, for example, and you want a Chimerics in your gang as an Outcast gang, you can do that because the Chimerics is a house-specific brute, and you can recruit that for your Outcast gang as well. Now, granted, that is the only kind of brute, hanger-on, hired gun, you can recruit with an Outcast gang that's from a house. But of course, like I said, there are some caveats when you do this, so keep that in mind when you build your lists. Now, let's go ahead and talk about alliances real quick for your gangs. So because you're a House Outcast gang, you're kind of limited on the type of alliances you can make with your Outcast gang. Specifically speaking, the only alliances you can make are whatever strong alliances that your original house had. So for example, let's pretend you're going to play a House of Ansar Outcast gang. The only alliances that you can make are the strong alliances that automatically come for House of Ansar. So for example, House Catalus, for example, as a noble house, you can make an alliance with them. Or the Promethean Guild, you can make an alliance with those guys from the guild if you want to. Now if you're criminal, you can make an alliance with the criminals from that gang as well, but that's how it works. It only is whatever specific strong alliances your house has. Those are the options that you can choose from, and that is all you can do. In my opinion, the best way to remember your alliances, because your alliances are now so restrictive as being a House Outcast gang, is to shore up any weaknesses that your gang might have and strengthen them with those alliances. For example, let's pretend you're going to play a House Orlok Outcast gang and you plan on using a lot of plasma weapons and flaming weapons and blaze weapons in your gang. Then obviously make an alliance with the Promethean Guild. The reason why is because you get those rerolls for your ammo checks and also reloads for your weapons from Flamer, as well as plasma weapons, which could be really valuable for your gang. So these are some examples we're talking about for alliances. There are a lot of different options you can go through, because depending on what your house is, so we're not going to really go through all of them, but for a general rule of thumb, this is good enough information for you to make your choices. Another thing to remember as well is that outlaw as well as law-abiding statuses are important when you're making your gang. So for example, if you decide to use a Dramatis Personae character who is law-abiding for the leader of your Outcast gang, you will not be able to make any criminal alliances unless, of course, you want to suffer that outlaw status. And vice versa. If you have an outlaw status leader leading your gang, you can only make alliances with those outlaw status gangs. So, for example, outlaw gangs can only make alliances with criminal factions, while law-abiding gangs can do merchants. But noble houses don't care about any of that, so you can, make a noble house alliance no problem, except for House Helmwar, because they don't work with outlaws. So now that we're going to talk about alliances, let's talk about brutes, hanger-ons, and hired guns. Now, when it comes to your brutes, hanger-ons, and hired guns, this part is kind of interesting because more often than not, you're going to be sticking to the house-specific ones that are usually available for your gang. Now, for obvious reasons, the most important and probably the most popular hanger-on is the Rodoc. Because of that Medicae skill, it really helps out, especially if your gang suffers a critical injury. Rodocs are worth their weight in gold, and now that we have the new rules for Medicae, that's also really important as well. 50 credits, it's a steal. You should always start your gang with one. Very rarely will you not. At the same time, for an Outcast gang specifically, propagandists as well as agitators I find are really helpful for an Outcast gang, because it does a couple of things. One, it helps with the recruitment for your fighters, so that way if you lose fighters, and you will lose fighters because Outcast gangs are not known for their toughness, you could easily recuperate your losses through the recruitment process with agitators as well as propagandists. At the same time, you could easily build up your reputation very quickly and recruit more hanger-ons and brutes and hired guns for your gang, because you'll be able to build up your reputation quicker. In fact, and if you have both the agitator and the propagandist, you might be able to increase your reputation by 6 points per battle if you happen to be lucky enough to win it. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Not to mention, like I said earlier, you do have access to house-specific brutes for your gang. So for example, if you're playing a House of Ansar Outcast gang, you'll be able to get a Spider Rig brute for your gang, because you do have access to those house-specific ones. So now that we're done talking about brutes, hanger-ons, and hired guns, let's go and give you an example of a starting roster that you can use in your very first campaign in the Aranthian Succession. Now obviously I can make an infinite number of Outcast gangs based on houses, but on this one though, I'm going to show you an example of a House of Caldor Outcast gang for the Aranthian Succession, rated at 2,400 points. And the reason why I'm picking this gang specifically is because you both have law-abiding Caldor fighters as well as redemptionists, and their lists that you can, all their equipment and weapons you can use to build up your gang. At the same time, they will be able to use Articles of Faith. They'll be following the path of the Redeemer, because the leader of this gang is Clovis the Redeemer, the special character for the Dramatis Personae. He's going to cost you 190 credits. He's going to be your leader with a Survivor archetype. He's got mesh. You're going to upgrade with mesh armor as well as a Gutter Forged cloak. So that way he's got a 4-up armor save as well as a 5-up ward save against environmental effects. You give him an incombustible halberd, because he automatically comes with that for a 5 ward save against a blaze condition, as well as a pyromantic mantle, so that way his versatile and melee attacks have blaze. He's also got a blessed mastercrafted eviscerator, because you're going to be taking a House Co-Iron alliance with this gang. He's also got the Book of the Redemptor as well as photo goggles, so that way he can see in the dark. He's also got the devotional frenzy skill, the fearsome skill, the Restless Faith skill, as well as a True Grit skill, and because he's a Survivor archetype, it gives him Nerves of Steel because your opponents will be shooting at him as well. He's got the Fearsome Reputation ability, which means your opponents will need to take willpower tests in order to charge and shoot at him, as well as the ability to create Articles of Faith, and he's also an outlaw, so because of that, your gang is automatically an outlaw as well. Up next is Deacon Malikev, who's going to cost you 120 credits. Now, normally this guy doesn't cost you anything, but he's going to cost you 120 credits because of the equipment you're going to give this guy. First of all, he's going to be one of your Met champions, as well as a Mastermind archetype. You're going to equip him with light carapace armor for that 4-up armor save, which comes with standard, and you're going to give him 2 weapons, a hand flamer as well as an axe. His weapon skill and ballistic skill are horrible, so the hand flamer is going to help kind of balance that out, and the only time you're really using the axe is in case you're trying to use him as an interference to protect Clovis the Redeemer. You're also giving him photo goggles, that way he can see in the dark. He's got the Bodyguard special rule, as well as Dedicated Follower, Scribe, the Liber Excruciatus, and Know Your Fate special rules. He also comes with the Evade and Lie Low skills, and because he is a Mastermind archetype, you're giving the Medicae skill for Savant, so that way he can patch up Clovis the Redeemer if anything happens to him. After that, you have 2 Outcast champions. Champion number 1 is going to cost you 255 credits. This is going to be a Gunslinger archetype equipped with Mesh Armor and a Gutter Forge Cloak for that 4-up armor save and 5-up ward save against environmental effects. They're going to be equipped with an autogun with a Flamer combo weapon, so that way they can shoot with autoguns as well as use a Flamer, an auto pistol for a backup weapon, as well as photo goggles, and you give them the Fast Shot skill, so that way they can shoot twice per activation. Outcast champion number 2 is going to cost you 210 credits. Once again, another Gunslinger archetype with Mesh Armor and Gutter Forge Cloak for that 4-up armor save and 5-up ward save. A grenade launcher with frag and crack grenades, as well as an auto pistol for a backup weapon. They also have photo goggles so they can see in the dark, and you're also to give them the Fast Shot abilities, so that way they can shoot twice. After that, you're going to have your first Outcast Hive skill number 1 is going to cost you 165 credits. This fighter's going to have Mesh Armor as well as a Gutter Forge Cloak and an Eviscerator as well as photo goggles. Outcast Hive skill number 2 is going to cost you 165 credits as well. And this fighter's going with Mesh Armor, Gutter Forge Cloak, a Master Crafted Great Sword, so that way you can get those Sever attacks, an auto pistol, as well as photo goggles. You also have Outcast Hive skill number 3 is going to cost you 135 credits. This fighter's got Mesh Armor, Gutter Forge Cloak, a flail with an auto pistol, as well as photo goggles. Outcast Hive skill number 4 is going to cost you 135 credits, and this fighter is equipped with Mesh Armor, a Gutter Forge Cloak, with a Pole Arm and Blunderbuss with Grape and Purgation Shot, as well as photo goggles as well. Outcast Hive skill number 5 is going to cost you 155 credits with Mesh Armor, a Gutter Forge Cloak, a 2-handed hammer with an Exterminator, an auto pistol, as well as photo goggles. And Outcast fighter number 5 kind of shows you what I was talking about using multiple equipment from different lists. You have the Mesh Armor and Gutter Forge Cloak from the Redemption from the Cawdor guys, but the 2-handed hammer with the Exterminator from the Redemptionists, and then you see that quite a bit through this list. Outcast Hive skill number 6 could cost 135 credits. They got Mesh Armor, a Gutter Forge Cloak, as well as an autogun with Exterminator, with auto pistol and photo goggles. And Outcast Hive skill number 7 is equipped exactly the same way. Now, for your hanger on this gang, you're going to spend your 70 credits for a Hive Preacher, who's armed with a 2-handed hammer, who's got the Inspirational, as well as the Sermon special rule, part of the Crew special rule, and is also an outlaw. Now, normally I would suggest you start off a gang with a Road Dog, but because the Hive Preacher automatically gives you Faith dice that you can use for this gang, that's why you're going to go with the Hive Preacher first. And if you do lose any fighters, well, they'll commend your spirit onto the Emperor and just recruit into the Hive Scum with the new weapons you two might have. Now, for your vehicle on this one, you got the Pulpatech, which is going to be a Scum Racer. It's going to cost you 530 credits. This character is driving a heavy custom vehicle that is tracked with a heavy stubber. It's also got extra armor, transport bed for the crew. It's also got a ram, all-wheel steering and tire claws with better handling, nitro burners, that way you can move an additional inch forward, as well as smoke vents so your enemies suffer -1 hit against you. It's got a boarding ramp to help you with attacking your enemies, body spikes in order to repel boarders, headlights, as well as flare launchers so you can see in the dark, smoke launchers so that way you can make a smoke screen, as well as wheel scythes so that way you can brush against fighters and kill them that way. The Pulpatech is built to destroy and to also stick around. Now, in case if your campaign does allow an alliance, you're going to make an alliance with the noble house of Co-Iron. That's what you're going to do, which is a strong alliance for House Cawdor. You're going to use the House Co-Iron Ministorum delegation. That's going to consist of your Prima Materia. She's got light carapace armor, a master crafted bolt pistol with shock stave and refractor field with devotional frenzy, as well as the overseer skill. And you have 2 Fraterra's bodyguards equipped with exactly the same with mesh armor, eviscerators, last pistols, as well as devotional frenzy. So this list is very much a close combat oriented list with a lot of flamer template attacks in this list, and it's going to be extremely powerful because of the ability for you to combine equipments from different lists within the same rulebook for all of your fighters. So now that we're done talking about the starting roster, let's kind of talk about exactly how you would play this gang on the tabletop with the gang overview. Now, when it comes to your gang and using this on the tabletop, you're going to have 4 fire teams. You're going to have 2 assault fire teams and 2 support fire teams. Assault fire team number 1 is going to consist of Clovis the Redeemer as well as Deacon Malakiv, who's going to act as bodyguard the entire time for Clovis the Redeemer. Outcast Hive Scum number 1, 2, as well as Hive Scum number 3, and your Road Preacher. Your assault fire team number 2 will consist of your Outcast Champion number 1, this is the one who's armed with the autogun with the Flamer combo, as well as the Prima Materis, the Frateris bodyguard number 1, Frateris bodyguard number 2, Outcast Hive Scum number 3, and Outcast Hive Scum number 5. Oh, sorry, number 4 and number 5. There we go. And of course, your support fire team number 1 consists of your Outcast Champion number 2. That's the one who's armed with the grenade launcher, as well as Outcast Hive Scum number 6 and 7. Those are the 2 guys who are armed with exterminators with their auto guns as well. And your last fire support team will be the Pulpatech, which is your vehicle as well. Pretty much